Hey there, I'm Kevin Downey, and I run an agency called Kevin M. Downey where we help B2B companies with their sales and marketing efforts. This includes sales and business development, representative recruiting, training on business development, process building in particular, and then finally email marketing, of course, to drive inbound leads for our B2B clients for their sales teams. This video is probably one of the most important videos, discussions that we can possibly have if you're a B2B business owner. So if you're a business to business company, you're an owner, a principal, and especially in small business, this video, what I'm going to talk about here, I think you are going to really identify with a lot. And especially if you've been in business pre-COVID and then through COVID and then gone through the last year. And a lot of the movement we saw in 23 and 24 coming into 25 and B2B companies feeling kind of stuck at this point. And I want to talk about all of that and what to do about it. Really focusing on lead generation, business development process, system building in B2B. Okay. All right. So let's talk about something that's really interesting. First, what's working in B2B? What drives leads in business to business companies? So I've worked as an agency for 10 years, done email for over 7, have worked with hundreds and hundreds of companies, and having worked with principals and sales executives and marketing people over that time period, I have a pretty good handle on what works in different kinds of businesses, but in general in business to business companies, what works. So let's walk through some of that now and get to the nitty gritty here at the end. But first thing, what drives leads in B2B? Trade shows. If you're in a business that has the opportunity to do targeted niche trade shows, that is certainly a good driver of customer acquisition, leads, and ultimately customer acquisition. PPC, SEO, targeted digital advertising, very good, can drive qualified leads and appointments, can be kind of expensive, but at the end of the day, can be very effective. Direct mail is a very good one, surprisingly, a lot might say. If you're really niche and you have a small audience to go after, especially principals, and if you're selling something higher dollar, direct mail can be really, really good still, and something that some of our clients utilize. Webinars for very niche kinds of businesses also can work very well. They're expensive to put on well and to drive the traffic to the webinars, but for conversion purposes, they can be very, very good. Now, the problem with all of these things in business to business is that to some degree, lesser or greater, they are intermittent. They are not going to be a daily driver of leads, okay? And so while they're all effective, and when we talk to companies, principals in particular, and they do all of these things, especially if they have a marketing person, which I'm going to dig into, all of these things are effective, but they're not driving leads day after day after day, and that's their problem. Okay, so what are the two things that drive leads day after day after day? Doing this 10 years. Rep prospecting, whether it's boots on the ground or reps doing old school, what we would call business development or telemarketing, using the phone, manual email, sometimes a little bit of LinkedIn, although that's waning in performance. Voicemail being really critical there, and I'm going to talk about that at the end. That is certainly the anchor if you're in B2B. In most cases. And then high volume automated email is certainly the best non-rep driven program or medium you can use to drive inbound leads. High volume meaning 2,500, 3,000 a day or more. And we don't want to email people more than once a day. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit more later in the video, but there you need to have 50, 60,000 contacts for that to be a real strong part of your business development system. Okay, so rep prospecting always involved high volume automated email to drive inbound leads for sales or sales development reps to reach out to. That certainly can be a really important part if you have enough contacts to go after. As a quick side note, do we have clients that use email as their anchor and no cold outreach? Yes, but it is pretty rare. You would have to have a very sizable audience to go after, hundreds and hundreds of thousands, if not close to $500,000, 750,000 contacts to go after. You have to have something nationwide and very general. If you have that, you can set up email, obviously, in multifaceted structure, multiple servers and so on and so forth, where you're doing nothing but inbound lead generation off of email and you don't have any cold outreach. But that is a pretty rare circumstance for most B2B companies, okay? All right, so why do I talk about all this and what is the backdrop here? So we want to talk about here what has happened in recent years for companies pre-COVID. What were we seeing in business development for B2B companies? What happened post-COVID? Why so many companies have brought in marketing people, whether full-time employees, freelancers, consulting firms, whatever, contractors, and why it hasn't done what they wanted it or needed it to do. So it's effective, but not as effective as they wanted. Let's go back and revisit that because it goes back to what I just pointed at, right? So going back pre-COVID, we could see over the years that B2B business development was getting more challenging. Why? Because it was harder to get a hold of decision makers, harder to pin them down, harder to get people on the phone to ask the questions to find out who that decision maker is. Decision makers more commonly remote. Receptionists not as involved in companies. You have automated, voicemail trees, or phone trees, and so much harder for reps to identify and ultimately get to decision maker. Right? That includes boots on the ground. Still effective, still works, but harder, getting increasingly harder over time. Then COVID happened, and everything went to heck. Right? Because now everybody that's a decision maker, with the exception of a handful of industries, went home, right? And now you really couldn't find them because there was no way to get to the phone that they answer, which in most cases is going to be their cell phone. So their phone within the company rolling over into voicemail, they wouldn't answer it ever, hardly ever, and it was all going to voicemail, okay? So we were seeing that as an evolution post-COVID or immediate impact post-COVID, and then there was frustration on the sales side with sales executives, VPs of sales, CSOs, and principals that their sales team was not able to generate the leads and appointments they needed. And they were barking at the salespeople, and the salespeople are barking back. We can't help. We can't get to anybody. We can't find anybody, whatever. And this was all part of everybody's frustration. And then we started to see in 22, 23, and especially in 24, principals then going to their marketing people or marketing consultants, marketing agencies, freelancers, and saying, we're stuck. Our sales reps need more leads and appointments. They need more at-bats, and we need help. They can't get to the decision makers. So they reached out, got to these marketing people, and what do the marketing people do? They don't do business development. That's not their core competency. And I have looked at marketing setups for companies, hundreds over the last few years since COVID. And I can tell you that all of these things are part of what marketing people in B2B do. They manage trade show attendance, right? They manage follow-up back off of those leads off of trade shows sometimes. They manage PPC and SEO and targeted digital advertising like LinkedIn. They don't do much direct mail, but it's something they certainly are familiar with and can manage. And in some cases, they are involved in putting on and setting up and marketing webinars, right? But their media that they use is typically going to be PPC or SEO, right? And targeted digital advertising. What is the problem with all of this? Again, it's intermittent, and in these two cases, really expensive because they are very limited media to use. So we're talking about Google and let's say LinkedIn. If all of the marketing people in B2B are targeting the same narrow audiences on those channels or on those media, obviously you have more advertising going on for a smaller audience. Your cost per click, your cost per getting in front of people impression keeps going up. Right? So if you understand pay-per-click, you understand that the cost per click increases, and there's obviously a lot of things that go into this, based on the number of searches and the number of people trying to advertise on those searches, right? So all effective, but really, really expensive, and again, intermittent. There's not nearly as many searches for B2B products and services as there are consumer things, B2C, not even close. And of course, in targeted digital advertising in B2B, most marketing people are focused on LinkedIn. A little bit on other social media, but we still have the same problem. We have so many marketing people trying to go after narrow audiences on just one or two or a handful of platforms or media, right? So now that we're coming out of 24, and I heard this in the latter half of 24 a lot, that they've implemented all these marketing things with their marketing people or person, and it's driven good quality leads here and there. It's driven customer acquisition, but it's not moving the needle enough, right? It's expensive, but it's all intermittent. It's here and there, and they may find one thing that's working for them in that list better than others. But at the end of the day, it's not driving leads day after day after day. So this is the sticking point. This is where companies are at, especially later in 24. I was hearing this a lot in discussions about sales recruiting, business development rep recruiting, email marketing, and training reps on cold outreach. And I'm hearing from prospects all of these the same theme, the same overall problem. Okay, so what do we do? All right, what's the solution? So all of those things can be good. If they're ROIing for you and driving customers eventually, great, keep running them. But if you're looking for day after day, daily lead flow, you've got two media that work and that's it, right? That work day after day after day. Cold outreach, targeted cold outreach by reps. Again, it can be sales reps doing it or dedicated business development reps or high volume automated email. And what we mean by this is not HTML email. We're not talking about newsletters. We are talking about high volume one-to-one text-based emails designed to elicit a response. So they are from a person to a person, and they're designed to elicit a response. The companies that do this in B2B typically are doing this kind of thing in low volume via their CRM, because business development messaging in general is better coming from the sales side of the company than the marketing people side, because sales side understands the cold outreach and direct response. Unfortunately, in most companies, they're doing it through their CRM. Their CRM only can connect through Google Workspace or Microsoft 365 accounts, so they can only send a very limited number of volume. That is not going to work. You have to have an email API or dedicated server structure so that you can send the volume that is going to drive enough leads day after day after day. And again, that starts at, say, 2,500, 3,000 a day or more, layers of that. Okay, which means you've got to have 50 or 60,000 contacts to go after. All right. So what is considered high volume? 50, 60,000 emails a month, outbound or more. Remember, it takes 500 to 1,500 outbound emails to generate one inbound lead, all things being equal. This program right here on your screen, those are all leads. There are 20 leads there, 19 or 20. 20 leads there. Let's use it for fuzzy math, 20. All right, that's on 6,000 outbound. That's 300 outbound emails to generate a lead. That is a very high performing campaign. Doesn't perform that way every day, but it comes close. It's less than 500 for sure for this campaign. That is how you drive inbound leads, if you have enough audience to go after. On top of that, we always need to be running targeted outreach with reps. Again, whether it's sales or business development reps, that's either your anchor or it's at least a strong part of your business development system you must have. Okay? If you're going to do email, as a side note, high volume automated email, who should be the one that builds and manages that? So it's not the marketing people. After having, again, done this for 7 years with email and worked with hundreds of companies at this point, it's too technical for marketing people. They just don't like that kind of thing because you're dealing with DNS settings on the setup side and a lot of those things and particular platforms. It's really going to be, in most cases, my first choice for managing email, if we don't do it for you as an agency, is going to be the person that manages your DNS settings for your website. So generally speaking, that's going to be somebody that's in tune with software and or IT. Sometimes someone, a principal in a small business, or if not one of those, then we'll work with somebody that's a VP of sales or a CSO. Okay, but that's the kind of people that you want handling your high volume automated email marketing, okay, to drive inbound leads. All right. So that's your combination. Those are your anchors. Okay. Let's talk about the specifically the manual side, the rep side of things. So what is the solution for reps to get better performance in business development? Okay. The percentages that I always say are that 70 to 80% of success in outbound business development is effort. 10 to 20% is brain power and talent, which talent primarily in sales and business development is a natural use of emotion. And then finally, 10% is knowledge of your products and services. It's important, but it's really not the driver. The main driver of success in business development is effort. So the question becomes, most of the time when reps fail, it's because they didn't make their calls. They may not have a very good process or system in place for business development. Maybe the company hasn't put it together yet. You haven't done that. And that's what we do with the training program here at my agency in working with companies. We build that system and that process and then train reps on it. But the main failing point in most B2B companies is the lack of calls by the reps. Okay, so what do we do to solve that in particular? So if you're a B2B company with a sales team or a business development team and you're not seeing the results you want to see, this is a program that is designed specifically to help you, right? So first, we want to build a system, a process for that outreach. What are the steps that they need to take, right? This is industry agnostic, target agnostic. Their process is the same, right? The things about your industry are unique. The things about your target audience are unique, and your reps, generally speaking, already know that, right? If not, you can train new reps on it, right? But the system, the process is the same in all of B2B companies. Okay, so we build that process and that system. That includes some level of what we would call scripting, although we don't want people reading when they're doing cold outreach. We do rep training, so rep training with me in this program specifically. We have a free call tracking template. So this is a template, a reporting system that your reps on this program must use in order to enter their numbers every day, number of calls, number of manual emails sent, number of conversations with decision makers, number of leads they've generated, appointments they've generated, so on and so forth. They have to do that day after day, whether they're doing cold outreach 1 day a week, or they're doing it 1 hour or 2 hours in the morning each day, or they're half-time or full-time on cold outreach. They must track their numbers. And the reason why is because tracking leads to doing the calls. If they do the calls, they will be successful. One thing I can tell you about this program and B2B company cold outreach in general is that if the reps follow a process and a system and they make their calls, I have never, ever seen a rep fail. The failing point is almost always lack of calling, lack of effort, right? And lack of tracking. So that tracking mechanism is very important to make it a thing that they have to do. And if it's kind of like taking your medicine or an apple a day, if they have to do it, then they will do it, and they create the habit, and the habit feeds on itself. Then they get better at it, they get used to it, and it becomes part of their routine. That is all necessary for them in order for them to make their calls on a day-to-day basis. When we see account executives and account managers that are supposed to be doing some cold outreach, but they have some customers, we see that they never make any new calls, barely any. And why don't they? Because on a day-to-day basis, they always come up with something that sidetracks them. They have a customer they need to deal with. Maybe they only have 20% of a book of business, but they come up with this, they come up with that. They're playing around with the CRM and email. They're playing with a prospect list, but they never sit down and systematically set themselves up to do cold outreach for a set of time every day or once a week. That is imperative for success for reps in 2025 because it's a grind, it's hard. And in order to be successful, they've got to be tracked. They've got to do reporting. It's very simple. The reporting thing that we build takes 60 seconds to fill out once a day at the end of the day. But then they have to have a process so that they're confident if they follow the process, they will get where they want to go. Okay? This program also includes custom voicemail scripting. Voicemail is probably the most underrated part of cold outreach in 2024-25 in modern era. And that is because it is so hard to get a hold of people and you don't pitch on voicemail, just like subject lines in email. We are always vague but never deceptive. We don't pitch on voicemail, and we have to customize that voicemail script so that they get calls back from decision makers. Okay. We handle cold email copywriting. Obviously, if we've sent 100 million emails for clients over the last 7 years. We know what works in cold email. So we handle the cold email copywriting for your reps. And then automated email consulting. So we don't train you on how to build a system. We don't run a system for you as part of this program. We simply consult based on what you are currently doing. And we tell you what to change about it, or whether or not you should ditch it altogether and replace it with something that has greater power, greater potential. Okay, that program, very inexpensive. It's $19.50 one-time fee. And then, of course, we oftentimes tie that into rep recruiting for clients. But this, of course, is a standalone program where we work with existing sales and business development teams. Okay, hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions, reach out to us, kevinmdowney.com. Again, to review, the main thing you need to consider when 2025 and trying to find success with business development and lead generation for your sales team, with your business development team, is very simply, you've got to get into a system and a process for your reps on their cold outreach. It has to be part of the anchor for your business development system. And then also, if you have the requisite number of contacts to go after, say we build it on Apollo for you, 50, 60,000 or more, high volume automated email is going to be very, very helpful in identifying decision makers and driving inbound leads for your sales team. So it's a great accelerator of the business development system. Again, if the number of contacts are there. If they're not, then it's all manual. It's all business development by sales reps or dedicated business development reps. Okay. Hopefully this helps you. Thanks so much for being here. If you need help, reach out through our website. Best of luck in business in 25. Really appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.